I'm Justy. Welcome back to the Skeptheist, an ongoing series of videos in which I discuss concepts of science and philosophy. Who am I? Well, that's irrelevant for the purpose of today's discussion, but stick around to the end if you want to see what I get up to. So today's episode is called the Naturalistic Fallacy. We have to ask first what's meant by natural. So I'm going to steer away from natural versus supernatural, at least initially, and simply go with the traditional definition of natural, which is that which is not touched by the hands of mankind. And pretty soon you'll discover that this definition makes most things artificial. A few examples here, by the way, again, of things that are natural that you might not like. Of course, lava. Lava is completely natural. So is botulism. So is dying at the age of 40. It's only artificial means that have extended our lifespan. The shelter that we enjoy is artificial. We live in a majorly altered world, and for many purposes that's a good thing. So as you probably already know, here on the show I like to dispel fear, superstition and ignorance, and you can add to that list oversimplification. So this episode runs the risk of being a very short one. I mean, we've basically in a couple of seconds dismissed the idea that everything natural is good, and conversely everything artificial is bad, or indeed everything artificial is good. That's a flip side that's worth considering. A lot of technological utopians feel that technology can solve all our problems, but obviously neither extreme is true. So at the risk of having a short episode, it's probably a good idea to discuss why people think these things, and to take one step back. This program, this show, The Skeptheist, it's not like it's, how to build an outdoor table, a series of steps or facts on any particular subject. It's my opinion, and by its very nature it's critical and opinionated, and in my opinion it's okay to be critical. So I'm not really having a go at people, I'm having a go at the thoughts that they have, or the way that they think, in particular the errors they commit. So we all know about logical fallacies and how to avoid those. The logical fallacy, of course, today is the naturalistic fallacy. For all x, such that x is natural, x must be good. In other words, if it's natural, then it's good. I think the primary reason that people think this way is it's easy. It's easier to think in a simplistic fashion. People think the way they do because it's convenient, and it's convenient to take the mindset of, it's sort of a binary mindset. Everything's either completely awesome or it's completely horrible. So, for example, technology will solve all our problems, or technology is completely evil. A natural way of living is completely awesome, or, bloody hippies, a natural way of living is not awesome. And, obviously neither of those extremes are true. People believe they're true, by the way. And so let's talk about the naturalistic fallacy. Simply put, it's the assertion that if something is natural, it must therefore be good. And this brings me to the use of the word chemical. So, a chemical is a mental model that's applied to phenomena in the world. Now, it's easy to think of a chemical as, let's just say, this. I mean, this is a chemical. It has a warning on it, and it's a flammable gas, and it's, you wouldn't ingest it, and all the rest of it. So I can accept, of course, that there is a rule of thumb, a working definition of the word chemical. If you say chemical, people think artificial. They think DDT. They think thalidomide. They think all sorts of artificial compounds that are bad. Now, bad is a bad word to use. Bad is an improper word to choose because it sort of has a moral vibration to it, if you will. Has a moral dimension to it. So let's pick a better word. Unhealthy. So chemicals can be unhealthy, obviously, and humankind has learnt this. And so, of course, I'm not making the point that the quote-unquote natural mindset is a wrong one. I'm just saying that it's better to think about things before kind of making your mind up and settling on it. So the skeptic's curse, if you will, or the skeptic's blessing, to use a highly loaded word, is that pretty much we never settle on anything. So everything is provisional. Now, in the day-to-day life, of course, things must be settled on in order to proceed. Otherwise, one could be so skeptical that you wouldn't be able to walk out the door for fear of falling over, or for fear of the ground collapsing beneath you. And nothing can be known with absolute certainty apart from that fact. And obviously, theorems in mathematics fall into the category of things that can be known with absolute certainty. But just as we know, there was a joke I remember from a show called The Big Gig in Australia, where Anthony Aykroyd and Glenn Nicholas were playing a pair of old gentlemen who were joking about how in the 80s, we all thought water was so good and it turned out to be carcinogenic. And that's obviously a joke, because there is in a sense nothing more natural than water and more life-giving than water. So, as much as one can be certain about anything in the real world, it's certain that that water is natural and it's good. On the other hand, many viruses and bacteria are good. We have them within ourselves, and in fact, we are mostly other things. We are mostly bacteria and viruses, but there are some obviously that are very nasty and bad to our health. And similarly with man-made compounds, products of copper smelting, and you name it. Obviously mercury. Now mercury is completely natural in a sense. I mean, it does occur on the Earth, and yet it's extremely bad for us. So there are lots of examples of natural things that are bad for us, natural things that are good for us, for our health, and conversely artificial things that are bad and good. So all I really wanted to cover today was, just because something is natural doesn't make it good or bad. And similarly with artificial things, they're not necessarily good or bad. The criteria for that depends entirely on the behaviour of the substance in question. So water, you could argue, is undeniably good, and asbestos is undeniably bad. And then there's the case of things that can be abused. Like, water is bad if you drown in it, and asbestos is good if you paint it and leave it alone. So, it could be quite a short episode if that's all there was to it. But I think what's really interesting to think about is, why do people think the way they do about things that are quote-unquote natural? And I think the answer there is because it's simple. It requires less effort than actually taking things on a case-by-case basis. And ultimately, that's the seduction of such thinking. It's simplistic. Now, you might recall from last week when I talked about claims of nature and the nature of claims, the mention of the word energy, and that will be in a whole other episode, the nature of energy. But one thing I want to touch on very quickly is that one objection I have to the use of the word is a little bit, we're talking skepticism tonight, but very similar to the idea of praying. Now, praying seems to be a universally good thing in most people's minds, not atheists and skeptics, obviously. But the reason for that, of course, is because it has a nice sentiment to it. And the reason we don't like it, of course, is because really it's an excuse to do nothing. It's an excuse to either go on your knees and do nothing, or in the case of using the word energy, I'll send out my energy, my healing vibe, all that sort of stuff. Yet again, an excuse not to actually do anything. And I think it's very interesting that the scientific definition of the word energy is the ability to do work. So if I have an energy, or if I'm putting energy into something, I'm actually putting effort into it. Now, I do that because the first thing that comes to mind is a physical energy, like I'm lifting something or cutting something or building something, getting off my backside and actually doing something. And similarly, mental energy, and I don't deny that there's a crossover there, that thinking of someone every day might put you in a mood or a mode in which you might actually do something for them as well. But my objection to the word energy is squarely on that basis, that it's an excuse not to do any work. And similarly, with thinking simplistically about things, it's an excuse not to think deeply. There is a lot to know in the world, and I don't even know what percentage I know or don't know. I do know that it's like in terms of just what humankind knows now, I know a tiny percentage of that, and I know a lot of stuff. To blow my own instrument, I know a lot about physics and chemistry and biology and electronics and astronomy, and I could go on. And I'm not sort of boasting. I am, let's face it. But the point I'm trying to make is I know heaps, and yet I know so little. And so it really angers me when I hear people who know less than I do go on about how do I describe this? About access to knowledge, and about, for example, being closed-minded because I have a quote-unquote scientific mindset. I'd like those people to know what I know first and then make that assessment, because, and now I'm ranting, but let's face it, growing up the way I did, exposed to New Age mindsets, I know about that stuff as well. And I think if the people who have this sort of natural/magical thinking knew what I knew as well, then they might have a different attitude. Let's face it, kids, the thing I'm really trying to rail against is hypocrisy. So it's fear, superstition, ignorance, simplistic thinking, and hypocrisy. So people accepting on the one hand that they can get into an aeroplane, a device that's been tested by science and technology over many, many years, and of course doesn't have a perfect track record, but as the often trotted statistic tells us, is safer than driving. People like that are prepared to do that on the one hand, and then bash science or promote some untested, untestable modality. That really gets on my goat, if that's the right expression. So, and that's something I'd like to try and do my part to combat, if possible. Just a bit of consistency would be nice. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
I'm a Skeptheist, skeptical atheist. Skeptics have open mind, didn't you know? If you didn't know, maybe watch the show. It's called the Skeptheist. When you have an open mind, you can grow. If you say you're open minded, try to put some work behind a Skeptheist.